I'd like to call the meeting to order. Lynn, could you lead us in the pledge, please? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to welcome everyone to the February regular meeting of the District 94 Board of Education. And Rich, may we have the mission statement?
Community High School strives to promote and provide growth experiences in learning, leadership, and living.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Casey Mayer. Ms. Doremus.
Present via phone due to medical reasons.
Ms. Munoz. Mr. Nagel.
Present.
Mr. Safe. Present. Mr. Zuniga.
Present.
Okay, that brings any additions to the agenda? Hearing none, we move to good news of the district, Students of the Month. Congratulations, Mariana. Congratulations, Philip. And that brings us to public participation. This is the portion of our meeting where any member of the public can address the Board of Education on any topic. Presentations are limited to no more than 5 minutes per person, with a total time limit of 30 minutes for public participation. Due to legislative restrictions on what boards can or cannot comment on, the board does not engage in a dialogue during public participation, but will listen to concerns and, where appropriate, direct the administration to follow up. All right, and first up for public participation is Dave Hempy.
Good evening. My name is Dave Hempy. I'm the president of the school board of Winfield School District 34. And I thank the opportunity to address this board tonight. I'm speaking on behalf and hoping to encourage your vote to participate on a resolution proposing TIP 2 in Winfield. TIP 2 started off badly in 2018. Started behind closed doors and closed session discussing the matter amongst themselves. Published input was provided. 2019, when directly asked of the board about TIP 2, if the board was considering a TIP, they emphatically denied it. That was not going to be made.
Sorry. Okay. Amongst themselves, and then canceled the TIF to wait for a new administration that we all hope would have more transparency than the present one. In 2021, I met with the future President Sorgatz, and he asked if our board would be willing to negotiate a TIF. I was not president at the time of the board, but I thought that that was a possibility, and I said that he would, if we could call a meeting, we'd meet. At that time, he did not want to meet with District 94, the Park District, the Fire Protection District, or any other board, or other government body. We met in July, and the documents that they provided were full of errors, and we had to go back and have them redo them. In September, in the meantime, I had asked at the September meeting that I invited District 94 to participate in that meeting. And that 2-hour meeting went basically over the PDF spreadsheet with no backup that was promised us, and we went through that. It started at a $16 million for the village of Winfield and a $6 million to be split by everybody else. Come to October, that number changed to 18 and 4. No negotiation, no discussion. The village was just telling us what they were going to get, and we had to accept it. In November, we decided to continue with the IGA language because it had enough errors that we were trying to interpret what they were telling us, and the 50-50 offer was floated and promptly denied. It was denied by the village attorney as a non-starter. Also in November, after being humiliated about holding back $300,000 from the Park District in impact fees that were promised them from the Winfield apartment development, the village gave in and released the money to the Park District. Now in January, the Fire Protection District sees that they've been targeted as possible development for the fire station. It's in the Winfield Word that they published in January. They did not talk to the fire station. They didn't talk to the Park District, just like they didn't talk to us about what they were telling us what they were going to do. So what's next? 70% of the development is already happening, and it will continue on as it develops, more and more buildings will be developed. The TIF fund will be controlled solely by the village of Winfield, and our residents are paying into the levies that the TIF fund takes away from the different districts. The only oversight will be the annual review meeting, which lasts about 15 minutes at the village hall, and they'll basically tell us how they spent the money. So I see a pattern here that they're not intending to negotiate. All they're telling us is what they're going to tell us, what we're going to get, how we're going to do, what they're going to do. And from then on, I mean, they've been consistent in their pattern, and the only way I can see winning or having some kind of resolution is your resolution supporting against the TIF to support District 34 against it also. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next up would be Lisa Upham.
I'm a little shorter. Hi, I'm Lisa Upham. I'm a mom of three, two here at West Chicago District 94 High School, resident of West Chicago for almost 17 years, a practicing midwife, and a business owner. At this time last year, I attended several board meetings advocating for a return to in-person learning. And now I'm here again advocating for my kids, insisting that this school go mask optional, effective immediately. Last summer, the district announced the return to the fall semester was going to be mask optional, then backtracked and decided to enforce the masking requirement. Since one of my children has a history of allergy-related asthma that's exacerbated by masks, our family doctor wrote her a medical exemption letter. This school refused to accommodate her, with the exception that she could take mask breaks outside. We considered seeking legal representation, but decided to send her to school with the sheerest mask we could find that she pulls down over her nose, under her nose every chance she gets. Still, she's continued to suffer throughout the school year being in the building. We added a second medical opinion to her case a couple weeks ago when we saw a dermatologist for her skin condition. This dermatologist said what she sees all day, every day right now is acne from masks in teenagers. And this is just acne and asthma. We know more now than we did at this time last year, and it's not just about the virus. Regardless of how you feel about masks, along with social distancing related mitigations, have increased depressions in teens by 200%, eating disorders by 223%, and suicide by almost 300%. Over the past 2 weeks, with cases dropping to record lows and nothing changing regarding mandatory masks, the people of Illinois have kind of reached their breaking point. We're just one of a handful of states still trying to mask our kids, and there's lawsuits filed to address it. On February 4th, a Sangamon County judge ruled that the emergency rules placed on September 17th of 2021 were deemed null and void. Our district, while not named in that suit, decided to say that and state that, saying that we will continue to mask as the governor says. However, today, the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules voted 9-0 to suspend the mask mandate in Illinois. So as of right now, the time of this meeting, there is no state-level mask mandate that appeals to schools legally. What does still exist at this time is a right to due process under the law. A mask is considered a quarantine device, and nearly 600 schools in Illinois, as of 5 hours ago when I last checked, have realized they do not have the power or legal authority to quarantine and isolate children without due process. They do not have the right to exclude them because of being a close contact. Whether in the Sangamon County lawsuit or not, they've decided to protect the freedom and individual rights by going mask optional. No one's going to say that every child has to take their mask off. If they want to wear one, they certainly can. However, we forced them on our kids for far too long. If the district has been a district which has followed the guidance from the start, I'd encourage you to continue doing so, which means that as of today, the mask mandate in Illinois schools is legally over. We have rights and always have, and it's time to support those rights again. Failure to do so will bring a lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Lisa. Next up would be Matt Tibble.
Good evening. My wife and I are planning to see the play Groundhog's Day at the Paramount Theater. And standing up here before you, it feels a little bit like that because it seems like I've been up here 2 or 3 times addressing the same issue. But it is a very important issue for both District 94 and 34. I've worked closely with the District 94 representatives during some of these negotiations that have taken place concerning TIF2. I've appreciated the professionalism, the dedication to education that I've seen during those interactions, and the attention to detail. And I'm glad that we've had an opportunity to sit down and work collectively concerning this issue. I see the districts having similar goals associated with it. There are some significant ramifications associated with TIF2. By the village's estimates, it redirects approximately $21 million of funds that would go to other taxing bodies towards the development of Winfield's town center. That includes significant funds from District 34 and District 94. The IGA that you all reviewed at a prior board meeting showed that $14 million is going to be allocated towards a village hall that does not produce tax revenue for District 94 or 34, $1 million towards a public plaza that does not produce tax revenue for District 34 and 94, and $1 million for municipal developments that, again, will not produce economic revenue by way of real estate taxes for District 34 and 94. There's a reference to $2 million worth of economic incentives in that IGA, and that's to get tenants in the building, is what we're told. Given those numbers, you can see that the overriding goal associated with Winfield's plan for TIF2 is municipal development. If we are looking at the $16 million number, $7,084,480 will be directed from District 34. District 94's revenue will be $4,413,070 will be redirected from District 94 for municipal development under that scenario. If the village let TIF 1 expire, we would have approximately $8 million left. There's $1.6 million in cash in the village's TIF fund according to their October board packet, and they estimate that TIF 1 will generate another $6.7 million in revenue during its remaining years. That's more than enough to make up the $2 million in economic incentives that the village says it needs to be able to get the other buildings built associated with downtown. That's part of the reason why Winfield 34 filed suit. As I've talked about before, there's questions concerning the legality with regard to tiffing and re-tiffing. The statute doesn't permit that per se. There's also the but-for test, which your board member referenced during the course of the joint review board meeting, whether that's necessary for purposes of the development. And the position I think District 94 took at the joint review board meeting and District 34 took at the board meeting is that it's not. You know, there's a commonality associated with interest with a little bit of a twist. District 34's position is that it's inequitable to have 1/3 of the town pay for municipal development that benefits the entire town. District 94's position should be a little bit different in that taxpayers in Warrenville, Carroll Stream, and parts of West Chicago, should they be paying for the development of a municipal center that does not benefit them? And I think that's one of the questions that you and the board should talk about tonight. The village is constantly blurring the lines between TIF 1 and TIF 2 in terms of talking about revenue associated with this. During the course of those board meetings, we tried to separate out those issues. District 94 has paid its dues with regard to TIF 1. It's entitled to reap the benefits associated with those, and the blurring the lines of those is inappropriate. It's been a tough 2 years in public education. It's been tough for students. It's been tough for parents. It's been tough for staff and teachers. It's been tough for administrators, and it sure as heck been tough for board members. Having to address this TIF issue in the middle of this educational crisis is what I would call it, is unfortunate. I don't think it's a coincidence. There are times in which advocacy is necessary by entities such as yourself, and I think what you're doing tonight or what you've proposed to do tonight by way of your resolution is advocacy that benefits the taxpayers of your district and the students, and I thank you for it.
Thank you for your comments, Matt. And moving to another Matt, that brings up Matt Garling.
Good evening. My name is Matt Garling. I'm a parent of one child in the district and another one in the middle school that will be here shortly, and also a community member for a number of years. Thank you very much for serving on this school board and the many hours that you spend doing so. I wanted to talk about the mask and other COVID mandates briefly tonight. I believe it is time that we as a school district start to lift them and lift them quickly. Students are better off served by learning without the mask, for example, and without a lot of the other restrictions. I'm not going to go through the details of the court case that has been happening in Sangamon County. I'm guessing that all of you are certainly well aware of that. But the opinions and the government is shifting here quickly too. Just this afternoon, JCAR from Springfield has objected to and blocked Pritzker's attempt to enforce the IDPH rulings on school districts, as well as a new 150-day mandate for schools to continue masking. So all of this together, it's time that we as a school district, lift them, put our kids first so that they can learn as best as possible, and make masks optional on our campus. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Matt. That brings up Blanca.
Hi, my name is Blanca, because I know you guys, they're recording. I'm here more to be the voice of the support staff. As you know, in the past, we had a rough relationship between support staff and board members and administration. So I just wanted to thank you that you have heard kind of what they have raised, which is they want to get paid more. We want to get paid more. But the reality is that the more they hear that there's new openings or new ways of you guys putting the money, it brings concerns to them, because they feel like I haven't expressed enough that we need to get paid more. I know there are negotiations this next year, and I know that you guys have been very open and maybe thinking about it, to make it sooner. But I just wanted to make it a voice out there, because, as you know, in the past, they probably don't think that the president really voiced what their concerns is. And we're trying, Moses and Julie, we're trying to build that bridge, but it's going to take us time. So with that saying, I also support the advice that last time Cheryl came about the hot tip. That would be a good position to really put it in our website, not just for the students as it was presented, but also for the staff. They could at least express themselves in there, anonymous. And like that, they know that you guys can also hear what they have to say. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Blanca. And the last one I have here is from Cruz Maria Esteban Alans. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Mi nombre es Cruz María Barrios.
My name is Cruz Maria Barrios,
Ahorita estoy la presidenta de BIPAC.
and I am currently the president of EPAC.
Yo sé que no es la primera vez que me miran aquí. Vengo porque tengo unos puntos aquí para compartirles.
I know it's not the first time that you are seeing me here, but I have a few points that I am here to share tonight.
Quiero darle las gracias porque estoy mirando que ya están haciendo algunos cambios de los que se habían pedido anteriormente.
First of all, I want to thank you tonight because I have seen some changes that have been previously asked for.
Como el ballet folclórico, que pues lo miramos como una distracción para algunos de los muchachos que quieran, que les guste bailar.
Such as the ballet folklorico, who are distraction for some of those students who like to dance.
Y también por poner los bases ya después de la escuela, del horario escolar. Creo que se tardaron porque ya ahorita prácticamente ya va a terminar el año, pero igual les quiero dar las gracias y ojalá y pues esto vuelva a seguir el próximo año.
And also for the basis of the school year, I understand that the end of the school year is about to come to an end, but I know that you set the basis for it, so I want to thank you for that.
Un punto bien importante que me gustaría que tomen en cuenta es que yo vengo a exigirles, como madre y como presidenta de BIPAC, les vengo a exigir donde haya una línea que se llama tip lane, para donde puedan reportarse todas las cosas que están sucediendo. Muchos niños se están quedando callados, muchos papás también, de las cosas que están pasando aquí adentro de la escuela y no se animan a hablar.
I'd like to, as a mother, as a president of EPAC, and I'd like to share that there is time to demand about the tip line or the anonymous line, the things that need to be shared that is happening currently in the school, that some people are staying quiet and they need to share, but they're remaining quiet.
Eso es un punto bien importante que yo lo busqué en la página y no encontré donde puedan ellos o donde podamos expresarse uno anónimamente sin que haya después, no sé, cosas en contra de las personas que se atreven a hablar.
I looked in the website for that particular information online where somebody can make an anonymous tip and remain anonymous without any repercussions.
También otro punto que yo tengo aquí es los cierres de baño. Están cerrando los baños, prácticamente la mayoría de los baños están cerrados. Hay más de 2,000 estudiantes aquí en esta escuela y llega al punto en que son muy pocos los baños que están abiertos y donde los que dejan abiertos son donde muchos niños se están drogando ahí. Y pues yo también aquí traigo a mi hijo porque pues él se da cuenta, él está viviendo aquí todos los días y él se da cuenta de las cosas que están sucediendo en esta escuela.
The other topic I want to talk about are currently the situation with the bathrooms. There are many closures with the bathrooms. There are over 2,000 students at this school, and it's too many to be closed, and those who are remaining open, they are currently being used for drug purposes. My son is currently here, and he has seen that. He has seen exactly how everybody is using drugs inside of the bathrooms. And that's why I brought him here tonight.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Esteban Alanis. I'm currently a senior in this Chicago High School. I don't have the time to explain my story and I guess everything that's happened, but I can say that freshman year, I came in here struggling with my mental problems. I did struggle with drug abuse, and I cannot blame the school for any of this. I actually thank a lot of teachers for being there for me, trying to support me. Especially, I think it was after a time that I actually went into the hospital and I came back was when I actually got the school's attention, and was the time where I was talking to my social worker, which, in my opinion, I didn't understand why a social worker would talk to me about, I guess, how my day was, but as soon as I left that room, it was like my counselor and the whole school program, it was like back to grades, back to homework, back to whatever I guess the school life is. And it's like like I said, I struggle with what I struggled. I went back to the same bathrooms where it was like the same thing, the same situation. And I tried leaving the school for certain reasons. Those certain reasons, I guess, obviously I knew that, and the reality was that I couldn't really escape problems like that from any school. But I do know that there's a lot of things that schools could do to help. Like what my mom mentioned, there's a lot of lines that students would be available to that they have no clue of. I know for a fact, like I said, my mom was saying, I'm a student here. Like I said, it's 4 years now that I've seen this. There's students that honestly, it's like that's the thing with students. They don't want to speak up. They don't want to brag because it's like they don't want to seem like the one that's telling on kids. But the reality of this is that these drugs, these things that these kids are doing, like it will affect them in the future. It will affect them mentally. It will affect their family. It does harm their lives, and especially with school. I'm not the student to be talking about good grades, good attendance, and that's because I had my things going on that I wasn't getting the help with, and I guess I can't blame the school for that, but I do know that, again, there's a lot of things, a lot of clubs that could be started to support mental health, a lot of teachers more that could be reaching out to students when they have struggled with that. A lot of things that I believe schools could be doing to not support, fight fire to fire with kids that once they get caught, they get suspended or get done suspension, and then they're back at school. More of, you should really be thinking about what this is doing to you mentally and what it's going to do to you in your future. And I thank you guys for listening. Hope you guys have a good afternoon.
Thank you both for your comments. At this point, are there any other people who wish to comment publicly? Hearing none, that brings us to reports and information. Superintendent's report.
Good evening. There are, wanted to update the board on the FOIA requests that the district received. The district received 2 FOIA requests. One FOIA request was from the Illinois Retired Teachers Association requesting for names and email addresses of any certified staff who are retiring this year. And then the second FOIA request was from Cheryl Moore requesting for copies in Word format of job descriptions that are covered by the Teachers Association. Second topic I wanted to update the board on is in regards to TCD and the Dissolution Bylaw. So over the past couple months, the Technology Center of DuPage and really DAOS, the board of directors, have been reviewing their bylaws. And they came across the portion of the bylaw that has to do with dissolution, and they wanted to update the language. And so I wanted to provide the board with some context with that. And there's just a couple slides I wanted to project here. Just give me a second. Zero 8 3. Excuse the delay here. I gotta find the projector now. There it is. All right. So before I go into the slide, let me just give the board a little context. As I mentioned, the board, the DAOS board for TCD has been reviewing the bylaws regarding dissolution, which unfortunately, when it was first written back in the 80s, when you try to interpret it now in the new millennium, it seems a little strange. The language is confusing. At the last DAOS board meeting, Attorney John Fester provided some interpretation of that current language so that it made more sense. And procedurally, he will be rewriting that bylaw regarding dissolution and then providing that to the DAOS board for approval. And then once that happens, it will come to each district's individual board for approval before it's fully adopted as the new bylaw. So I wanted to provide the board with some context before we get to that. So for a little history, TCD or DAOS originally began as Davia with 8 high school districts, and District 94 was one of the original districts. DAOS was created in July 1st of 1986, and formal procedures were enacted to transfer all assets under Davia to DAOS. And part of the switch from Davia to DAOS was because the system, as it's called, expanded to 14 districts from the original 8. At the time when Davia became DAOS, an appraisal was conducted in 1986 of the facility, and at that time the facility was valued to be $19,943,270, so roughly $20,000. So in short, what the dissolution language we've all come to decide the interpretation of would be meaning the following. The bylaw indicates that the original 8 would receive a percentage equal to the original contribution of the assessed value of the facility from the 1986 appraisal upon dissolution. So there's one portion of the bylaw dissolution that basically states that if TCD and DAOS were to dissolve, then the facility itself, when Davia became DAOS, whatever that appraised amount was at that time, prior to right before the 6 other districts came on board, the original 8 would receive a percentage of their contribution to start Davia based upon that 1986 appraisal of $20 million-ish. So here you see the original 8 districts And this is the percentage contribution that they gave to start Davia. So if the dissolution occurred, and this is according to the bylaw, then District 94 here would receive 7% because at the time that Davia started, District 94 contributed 7% to the overall cost to start Davia. So if Deos were to dissolve, they would take the 1986 appraisal when Davia became Deos, give for the facility 7% of that 20 million to District 94. Then there's all the other equipment and furniture and other items that has been purchased since that time. So the discussion then became that all other assets, equipment, furniture, et cetera, would be distributed to all 14 districts based upon some type of average enrollment. And the reason being is because over the course of time, the enrollment did change now with the 14 districts because other districts contributed more or less, had more students or whatever. And so here you see the 14 districts are now a part of Deos. And so you can go through that list yourself. So that, in a nutshell, is what the interpretation of the old bylaw will be. There is no rush to have the bylaw adopted at Deos. However, the attorney is working on rewriting the language. So once the bylaw language is rewritten and the new one comes forward to Deos for approval, then after that it will be brought to individual district boards for approval as well. And prior to that, I will remind the board of just the history, but I wanted to just at least give the board context right now.
I understand the need to legally make sure that everything's correct and updated. Do we have to be concerned that dissolution is on the horizon?
No, they were just going through all the bylaws.
It's just a cleanup.
And yeah, and the dissolution language in the current bylaw was very, very confusing.
Okay, you had me concerned there.
No. Correct. Just to put that out there, we are not talking about any imminent dissolution of the TCD or Deos. It was just a matter of going through the bylaws and updating them. Yeah. All right, and that concludes my report.
Okay, that brings us to Business Services Report.
Thank you. I just have a couple of quick items. I've begun discussions with Quest to determine the best way to move forward with our food service program next year. We are evaluating our options of continuing with the federal reimbursement program or going back to a similar setup to our prior contracts with Quest while still considering our low-income population. Hoping to hear back from Quest within the next couple of weeks to get a contract or at least to start that discussion and see what direction we want to go. Second item is the RFP for athletic trainer is available to the public. We've had 4 or 5 providers reach out with acknowledgement of the RFP. That opening will occur on February 25th with proposals to be discussed at the March Committee of the Whole meeting. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Human Resources Report.
Okay, just a real quick report for you this evening. The Wellness Committee has started a new Wellness Wednesdays initiative to bring opportunities for community and well-being to staff members each Wednesday before school. Throughout the month, the activities rotate between a pickup game on the first Wednesday, meditation on the second Wednesday, an exercise class like Zumba or a strength training class on the third Wednesday, and a DIY event the final Wednesday. We hope these offerings will attract a wide audience and give staff more opportunities to engage in wellness and mindfulness together. In addition, I want to mention that the sectioning process is underway, and I expect to bring you a full staffing report at the March board meeting. I also want to point out the change to the personnel report that's provided to you at table in your folders. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Principals Report.
I have a few brief updates for the board tonight, and then I do want to share a presentation regarding some planning for next school year. First, really happy to report that we are on our second day of having after-school activity buses for students. I will keep the board updated on the usage of this new option available for kids. Also, congratulations to our winter athletes whose seasons are wrapping up now. Senior night for boys basketball, cheerleading, and dance are happening right now in the Bishop Gym. So hopefully we'll get a score update soon. Also want the board to know, as Ms. Swartzoff said, again, continuing to work through the staffing process for next year. It's a lengthy one, and we're hoping to have that update for you next month. I also want to update the board that I had a meeting last week with Lehman Middle School. Myself and Mrs. Howard were able to visit with about 10 members of the Lehman team to discuss a range of articulation topics. We had a great dialogue, and we've committed to continue that and that will help us prepare for a very productive summer summit with all of our feeder schools later in the year. Now, I do want to shift to a presentation that I have prepared regarding the administrative team's work in response to the different academic and social emotional needs for the coming school years. You should have copies at your table and in your email inbox as well. Let me just go ahead and pull that up. So I'll be covering 3 topics tonight. First one is talking through our tiered academic supports, then our social emotional supports, and then some recommendations around next steps to take. So what you have here is what I would say is the typical pyramid of tiered support that schools use on a research basis to really determine the type of needs that kids are going to have. So if you look at this on a typical basis, about 80% of kids are going to be successful with what we call tier 1, meaning our core classroom instruction and the normal level of support that you would expect to see in a very typical high school experience. In tier 2, about 10 to 15% of kids are going to need some kind of targeted supplemental support to intervene and really make sure that they can navigate the high school experience. And then tier 3 is that much more intensive and individualized approach where mostly we change a child's instructional environment to make sure they can find success. So this is, again, on the left, that typical distribution. And then when we look on the right, as we start to gather the data for our incoming classes, we look at the needs that we've seen this year, and we extrapolate some of that out. Especially when we look at our younger cohorts, this is our projected distribution that we are anticipating seeing when it comes to the academic needs for our students. So really seeing that getting close to 50% of our students likely needing some kind of tier 2 academic support to find success. So right now, this is right here, right now, these are the courses that we offer that are themselves tier 2 academic supports. We have AVID, which I know we've talked at length with the board in a variety of ways. We've had implemented for about 11 years now. It's a great program. Additionally, the board did approve the addition of a 4th teacher to AVID as we go back to last year, and that's been a wonderful addition. That's been very successful for us. So as you can see, we have about 128 freshmen. This is just a sample of a 9th grade cohort right here. And that really is designed for kids to help them navigate things like executive function, study skills, and some of those additional needs that they may have. We also have SRC, our Student Resource Center. Ms. Blanca is here. She's a full-time member of that team. And that is, again, 1 classroom teacher, 2 paraprofessionals, and it runs 6 periods a day. Right now, we have about 45 freshmen in there. Now, it's designed to really help a kid who needs what I would refer to as a much more structured study hall. They need a period, they need some adults to support them, they need help with executive function, and they have some classes they're struggling with, and they need that extra level of support to really get through it. So hold on to that number as I go to our next slide. This is a structure that we would like to propose as the administrative team. And what you see are a couple of changes highlighted in red. So you still have our SRC structure, which is very successful and something we really rely on as a school. But what you see here is the number reducing. So in a typical freshman cohort, we would see around 30 kids in there as opposed to the 45 to 50 that we might have. The reason being is that right now, SRC is taking on and working with kids who are having failures in multiple academic classes. And that's not what they were designed for. And we're seeing that those academic struggles are really a result of a variety of both academic as well as social emotional need. What you also see over here, again, the AVID program has capacity for about 200 freshmen. It continues to be a very popular program, and a lot of kudos to Lehman Middle School. They now run that program, and it really helps as a feeder. The big one you see here is the addition of what we're calling the Core Content Support Lab. And I'll talk more about that in future slides, but this would be designed, it would be 4 classroom teachers. It would run 5 times a day across. It would be able to address all of our different cohorts, but really focusing more on our soon-to-be freshmen and our soon-to-be sophomores. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But down here, the intended purpose, it's remediating the specific academic deficits in the graduation required courses that we see kids struggle with. SRC wasn't designed for that. It isn't necessarily designed for someone who needs explicit help in an academic standard of English or math or science. This would be designed for that. We are seeing kids who have academic deficits in what we would consider high school academic standards. This would be designed to really explicitly support those, and then it allows our SRC program to continue to focus on what its intended purpose was. I want to point out again a few things here. As you look across the spectrum of this, it would give us the ability to have over 300 freshmen in our soon-to-be freshman cohort have a structured course-based academic Tier 2 support in their day. As you also see, we want to work and do something that's been very successful this year, and we want to explicitly push in social work support to not only our SRC, but also into that core content support lab. Because again, very seldom is it that a kid is only struggling academically or only struggling social emotionally. Oftentimes, after a while, the two start to go hand in hand, and we find that the root causes need to be addressed from both perspectives. So this is another just visual representation of what a core content support lab period would look like. We'd have about 40 students per period. There would be a teacher in English, math, science, social studies, and we would divide the students up based on their needs. So in a given day, a teacher could have about 10 kids, but it gives them the opportunity to work small group, one-on-one, to really structure some things, but to intentionally work with a child in the academic areas that they need support. Because we're seeing more and more students, sometimes it's a matter of they just need some executive function or a little bit of help, but a lot of times it is a matter of they struggle with the academic content. And we want to make sure that we provide supports that come alongside them and that continue to allow them to access college and career-ready coursework. And this would be designed to do that. So as you think about our Tier 2 course-based supports in general, it almost has three very distinct layers to it then. AVID being a very supportive environment, designed for kids who will be the first in their family to go to college, who are definitely have a lot of academic propensity, but for whatever reason maybe don't have some of that insider knowledge or that wherewithal to navigate it on their own. AVID is really meant to support those kids through the high school process and to make them college and career ready. SRC is designed to be a very responsive opportunity for kids, giving them some of that structure and some of that extra adult support and relationship that they need. And then core content support lab, I had to go with the acronym now because it got a little too lengthy for the text here. But that's a very intensive approach. And we're really looking at kids then almost being able to, as they need, we're able to use these different tools at our disposal to support kids depending on what they are presenting. So I also don't want to forget about the non-course-based academic supports that we have. Again, we have expanded our after-school tutoring program to a number more teachers, as well as now supporting it with busing. We have our academic coaching apparatus. And I do not want the board to forget about the Student Support Initiative, which does have a significant academic support component to it. If that is ratified and goes through, that would be another non-course-based academic support we would have. So as you go back to that distribution that I showed you earlier, and we think about the prospect of 45 or 50% of a cohort really needing some targeted academic support, and we look at what we would then have, this gives us quite a good toolbox to really begin to think about how we're addressing the needs that we're beginning to see with students. Not beginning to see, but seeing, I think, in a more frequent and more intense way than maybe we've been used to prior to the pandemic. So now, again, going back to that idea of a hypothetical 500 student cohort, which is about the size of a typical cohort of incoming freshmen, although our last two have been a little bigger than that. But this would give us the capacity for 60% of that cohort to, again, have a structured during their day Tier 2 support in some really effective ways. Again, that also doesn't speak to the non-course-based supports, as well as what I think are probably some of the best supports is a kid just working with their teacher, staying after school, coming in early, and I don't think I need to tell this board that our teachers and our paraprofessionals do an amazing job of making themselves available and having those unofficial supports available in spades as well. This simply adds more structure to that. Part 2, I want to switch over a little bit to the social emotional side. So as a reminder, this is the CASTLE framework. And this is something that's been very advantageous for schools, that it is a set of national standards around social emotional learning, which has been very helpful. These are the standards from which we have done the work to build out the Student Support Initiative, as well as what we are using to look at our students' SEL needs as we address those. So it has 3 areas that we've looked at very intensely this year: classroom, schools, families, and caregivers. So let me just review a little bit where we're at in each of those 3 areas. So at the classroom, you may remember earlier, going back to a year ago, the board approved the usage of the Panorama program, which is a survey of students that gives the school real data around the SEL needs of our students. And that survey, we administered it earlier this year, gave us 3 areas of focus for our students that they showed some deficit in: grit, self-efficacy, and growth mindset. And we are working across our divisions to find opportunities and ways to infuse learning in those areas into our content classes. At the school level, again, we are also working on the Student Support Initiative, and that could definitely be a great opportunity to address the CASTLE standards. We've had a focus on equitable grading practices throughout this year, and we're also examining our other practices and procedures as a school to make sure that we are being more SEL-centric in the areas that we're working. One of the areas that we know we want to grow in, and that we've put a lot of preparation, things that Dr. Chang has talked about as we look at some of the administrative work that we're doing this year and going into next year, really looking at revamping our parent engagement series, looking for more one-to-one or small group meeting times with parents as well as students, and also addressing the root causes of absenteeism, not simply addressing the symptom, but getting to the root causes. So looking at those needs and the span of that, and that none of that's easy to do, I want to talk about recommended next steps as we think about those needs that we want to address for the whole school. So to support the core content support lab, we would be asking for 1 additional FTE in English, math, social studies, and science. So for a total of 4 FTEs, 1 in each of those 4 core graduation content areas. I went the wrong way. My apologies. In counseling and social work, those are really been 2 of our main avenues through which we have looked to do to spearhead a lot of our SEL well-being and work. We currently have 6 school counselors, and we would be proposing to go to 8. We currently have 5 social workers, and we would propose to go to 7. So as we look at the rationale for those 2 ads specifically, first I want to think about counseling. Right now our counselors on average have about 340 to 360 students on their caseload. And we are still a high school that prioritizes the in-person meeting between the counselor, the student, and the students and the parents, especially for incoming freshmen, to make sure that we're building a relationship and we're getting them off on the right foot for that year. What I'll tell you is to do that with a caseload of 340 to 360 kids is very difficult. By going from 6 to 8 counselors, we would then be in about the 260 student per counselor caseload, which brings us into the range that ASCA, which is the American School Counselor Association, that's the range that they recommend. So what does that give us? What does that allow for? It gives us more high quality school counseling opportunities, the one-on-one, the career exploration, the one-on-one time that kids often need, both scheduled and unscheduled, as we all know. It also gives us more opportunity to build those relationships with kids and parents. But more specifically, and I outlined it, I highlighted it in the at the bottom there, more parent engagement and outreach, as well as more opportunity to intervene on student attendance. That is one of the needs that we are seeing in spades this year, and that I know other schools are seeing just as much as we are, if not more. The needs and the different causes that are keeping some kids out of school for really inordinate amounts of time. So now thinking about social work, for the last 2 years, let's be very honest, we've been on what I would call a reactive footing when it comes to social work. And that has been because of the tremendous amount of need that we have seen in the last 23 months with students. And our social workers have done unbelievable work, and I applaud the board A year ago, you supported us to get 2 social work interns who have been tremendous. Their time is coming to an end. They end at the end of April. They finish their coursework, and they've been great. We do want to get to the point where we are not just doing reactive social work, but rather proactive social work, pushing into classrooms, convening things, having tier 1 instruction around social emotional well-being. So we're equipping kids with the tools they need to make sure that they can deal and process with some of the challenges that we are seeing kids struggle with. It also allows us to directly support academic programming. One of the great things that Mr. Regan and our department has done is they're pushing social workers, connecting them directly with programs. Right now, such as AVID. We've seen a lot of success with the social workers intentionally pushing into AVID, delivering lessons themselves, building those relationships. I would like to do so with our SRC as well as with the proposed core content support lab. It also is going to allow us, when we have more people, and they're not just scrambling to get through their caseloads, but we have more people on our social work team, we have more people on our counseling team, it's going to allow for a much more team-intensive approach, especially around kids who are showing severe signs of struggle. Because when you can get the counselor together, the social worker, and whatever other adult who might be needed, we can really start to wrap those services around earlier and more comprehensively. And again, it's going to also allow us for more parent engagement and outreach and more opportunities to intervene with those attendance needs that we see with some students. So in summary, as you look at the total proposal, and I want to couch this appropriately. So this is a bigger staffing proposal than I'm sure we've ever seen in a single year. This is to be funded for the next 2 school years. Our proposal would be through the federal ESSER grant. And then we would use that fund for this. And those are funds that we do need to use. And it creates a great opportunity, but it creates a great opportunity at a time of really great need that we see in our students. It does not change, just like our traditional staffing proposal, as Ms. Swartzoff alluded to, we will have our usual ups and downs in the different divisions that we will bring forward to you in March. But as we get closer to that March timeline, this will also be an ask that we're going to come to the board for the next 2 school years to allow us to continue to work our way through the unprecedented challenges that we're seeing with kids as it comes to COVID-related issues. So I will kind of leave it at that, but also leave it for questions, knowing too that we do have additional board meetings between now and the staffing proposal, and then I can update the board on that as well.
So I want to say this is awesome. I love the fact of the tiered approach, especially at a time like this. So I just had a question real quick, Will, with so if I understand correctly, a student would get put in tier 2 and then AVID if they have in the SRC if they have one D or an F, correct?
So I don't want to say it's as black and white as that.
Okay.
But what that is it gives us 3 very distinct tools to make some decisions. Sometimes kids start out in AVID, and for whatever reason, we see more failing grades, and we decide that SRC might work. Right now, though, if SRC is not having the effect, we don't have a whole lot of other tools after that. So this would create the next layer there. But one of the things about the tiered approach that you've alluded to before is that it's not simple. It's very complicated, and the kids' needs are very complicated. So I don't want to paint an if this, then this. Yeah. It's going to be the judicious professionals in the building applying the tools that they have at their disposal appropriately as they judge. I just want to give them more tools.
Awesome. And then the other one I was going to ask you is, you talked about tier 1, SEL instruction. Is there something else, besides SEL instruction, what other tier 1s that we currently do?
Well, so that's a broad question. So in terms of tier 1, that is what we do at all times around our focus this year, and since I've been here, is build relationships with kids. Okay. The learning comes from relationships. So really, the best by far tier 1 is our teachers and our paraprofessionals and our staff who are amazing at building those relationships. As you recall, the Student Support Initiative does have a very explicit tier 1 SEL instructional approach directly derived from the CASEL standards. And if that were to go through, that would be, I think could be one of the best tier 1 SEL approaches in the entire area.
Thank you.
That's an ambitious staffing request. I have to wonder, do we have the facilities available for classroom and offices for another 8 people as well?
Yeah, you are one step ahead of the curve. So Mr. Egan and I have been having those conversations since about November, December about, okay, what would this look like in terms of room utilization? The good news is we do have the room utilization to run it, so we can do that. What it will mean, and what I've talked to our administrative team and they've talked to their divisions about, is that if you are used to having your classroom to yourself during a plan period, that may no longer be the case. So we are going to need to more fully utilize the room. So if in a given day, a room is only utilized, say, 6 out of 8 periods or 7 out of 8, now we're going to look at seeing more rooms utilized 8 out of 8 periods. But again, from the referendum and the construction, we have the office space. I think we have the facilities. I know we have the facilities we need. Obviously, we've been inhibited on that because of the pandemic. We've been much more conscious of giving people more private spaces to go to. And now that we've really lived in our space for a full academic year, I feel confident that we can make this work.
Realistically, do we think 2 years is enough?
Yeah, Mr. Sagan, it's a great question. I don't know the answer, and I'll tell you, I gave up making predictions about what the ramifications of this were going to be months and months and months ago because I kept making myself look foolish. The first day of school, like every other high school principal in the area, I didn't know it was going to be this much when the kids came back. Their needs in all facets of learning. It might not be. And so what I'll say is, obviously, when and if the federal funding runs out and we're seeing some of these things that I'm asking for be successful, then it's going to be on the leadership team and at the district level and the building level is we're going to have to make other decisions to prioritize what's working, but then to live in our means. And Gary, you've known me long enough. I'm nervous. I'm shaking almost about asking for 8 FTE. I understand the ramifications of that, but I've also never seen anything like this. Yeah. Yeah.
Is this kind of your plan to plan for the after 2 years? If things are getting better?
To evaluate. I would want to evaluate. Yeah. Because really what you see 2 separate things. You see a very intentional academic support that's comprised of 4 people and a very intentional SEL/student services support. We're going to have to evaluate those. And just like when we asked for the additions to our STAR program as well as our AVID program, next year we will do the same thing, that we will evaluate the addition of those 2 staffing changes the board made previously. Is that having the intended effect? Is this an expense that we think is worth the financial investment? And then we make decisions as as the governing body. You make recommendations, and then as the administration, we carry those out.
So these are teachers you'd be hiring specific for this program?
Great question. So realistically, for someone to come in off the street and think that they could support students in courses they've never taught probably doesn't work. Really what we're looking at is bringing in people to free up 5 periods of, let's say, a teacher who's been teaching Algebra 1 here for years, and they know exactly the units kids are going to struggle in, and they've got all the tricks and know how to do that. I wouldn't want someone to try to navigate their first year of teaching just in that environment. So likely they would push into a more traditional role, and that would free up the periods in the day of teachers who have been here a while, who really kind of know how things work. But I'm going to rely on my division heads to make the best choices on that.
Realistically, do we feel?
I think
Go ahead, Kath.
you already said how many social workers do we currently have?
We are at 5, and this would go to 7.
Okay. How difficult is it to get social workers hired right now?
Well, Kathy, I'll say they are in high demand. But one of the great things about our school is that we are very good about bringing student teachers on, as well as the admin interns that the board has approved. So I feel very confident that we can network and hopefully figure that out.
Do we still have a full-time social worker specifically working with special ed? Kids with IEPs, or have we had to scratch that?
Well, no, we have not scratched that, but we have social workers tag teaming and making sure there's always somebody in there. It's not the same person each period every day. But again, thinking about the umbrella of social work and not saying it's any one person's job, but rather making sure that they are, as a team, explicitly pushing into those areas.
Okay. Back when I had a child in that area, the social worker did so much more expansive, and that was why I was curious if there was someone, because she was there assisting parents in planning for, entrance into the adult world, and really very specialized. And I didn't know if we moved away from that and moved people around, so it was more of an umbrella, as you're saying.
No, that position exists that works specifically within that division, but they support multiple programs within that division.
I just, was thinking about how it used to be versus how it needs to be, and also being very cognizant that that area does have sort of different needs from a social worker
For sure.
than other areas. But thank you.
Absolutely.
One more question. Do we feel that the staffing is available? I mean, I've heard there's a distinct shortage of staff.
Yeah.
And is that going to be a problem?
I would say to be determined, but I have a lot of confidence that one of the reasons that people don't leave here very often is it's a good place to work. We've got a lot of networking. And I'll tell you, next week I am taking a recruiting trip out to my old college, where I'll be addressing about 50 graduating teaching candidates. And our entire administrative team and the HR department obviously do a good job in that. I have a lot of confidence that I think we can do this.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that presentation. It's very good to see some actual positive plans moving forward to meet the upcoming challenges. So it's very good to see that.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, that brings us to committee and representative reports. Anything from the world of SACID? Okay, next topic is District 94, District 33 joint board meeting. So just to kind of go through the background on this. In the past, there have been significant tensions between District 33 and District 94. The recent highlighting of concerns regarding the 8th graders who will be our freshmen next school year has pointed renewed attention on the relationship between the districts. Lynn, myself, and the president and vice president of District 33 met a couple of weeks ago to discuss the relationship between the districts. After a long discussion, we jointly came up with a proposal to move forward. Our proposal is that we have a joint meeting between Districts 33 and 94, including the full boards, the superintendents, and additional administrators that the superintendents feel are appropriate. This meeting would absolutely not go into past issues between the districts. It would strictly focus on where each district is today and where we can go forward together in the future. The goal would be to use methods similar to interest-based bargaining to help both districts move forward. Each district would take a turn to tell its story, including its strengths and weaknesses, its opportunities and its challenges. The idea is for each district to be brutally honest about where it stands in regards to meeting the needs of our students who are facing unprecedented challenges. Once both districts have told their stories, the next part of the meeting would be to, as a group, start identifying areas of focus where the districts can work on improving how we work together to better meet the needs of our students. Once areas have been identified, the meeting will end, and the superintendents will plan on how their administration, faculty, and staff teams will work together with their counterparts to address all of the areas discussed. Regular reports will be given to both school boards as things progress. Apart from the reports of updates and the improved service to our students, the other outcome of this meeting will be having a regular annual data meeting between Districts 33 and 94, where both boards and administrators will meet to discuss how District 33 students are performing once they move to the high school and how they stand when they're leaving high school. This discussion will never be about blaming and finger pointing. It will always focus on how the collaboration between the districts is working in serving our students and how it can be improved and strengthened. The students in our community are the joint responsibility of both districts, and it is imperative that both districts work together in a collaborative manner and bring all of our joint resources together to bear to help our students achieve the best of their abilities and desires. Because there is so much ground to cover, it is likely that this will either be 2 separate evening meetings or a half-day Saturday retreat or something similar. Having annual meetings between Districts 94 and District 25 and 34 should also resume as soon as possible, but this additional work is needed right now to strengthen the partnership between Districts 94 and 33. Provided that our board has a consensus to move forward with this plan, both superintendents will work together to plan out the logistics of this meeting or meetings as far as when and where they will take place. The intent is to have them occur as soon as possible so that the solutions discovered can be put into practice quickly to bring benefits to our current and incoming students as rapidly as possible. So that was the outcome of our discussion. So I throw it out to the board. Are there questions or comments about this proposal?
I guess my only comment, and I understand that District 33 is our largest feeder, but it sort of is leaving 34 and 25 behind in taking that kind of aggressive and proactive approach. I mean, who's to say that we can't get the same opportunities with all our feeder districts?
Well, the issue was that we have had a good working relationship with 34 and 25. It's 33 that we've had a long history of challenges in the relationship. And so, yes, absolutely, we need to work well with all of the districts, but this is kind of to rehabilitate and repair that relationship with 33. But absolutely, we need to be working with all of them.
We had a great relationship and we're meeting on a regular basis with them and doing some very, very positive things. And I'm not sure when in the last few years that stopped, but that happened consistently, very positively, and very effectively for a long time. So, talking on past history, you're going way, way back. Recent 6-7 years, that wasn't the case.
That's not the case according to what we're hearing from the folks at District 33, and I'm aware of its.
People on District 33 are not the people who were on the board then, but we have really great interactive meetings and very positive things happening between the two districts. That very rich. Do you remember when all the shops and days were on the board? And there were some great things happening back then.
Yeah, I think my impression is that with the recent COVID issues and things, we've sort of lost some of that communication and connection. But I feel that, fairly recently we've been making good progress, and our administrators have been communicating well with each other.
Yeah.
I think, just the environment in the last couple of years has sort of derailed our ability to keep close couple.
Yeah, let me provide some context, and I agree with Bob. I think this is a tremendous opportunity, Rich, to address your question. All 3 districts have different needs, and so if you remember, I indicated in the past couple board meetings that there will be a summer summit by which all the feeder districts will be meeting with us this June. So that will be an opportunity to collaborate and do some alignment work there. But admittedly, every district's kids, as they come to us, have varying needs. And so this would be a tremendous opportunity. In the past, over the past 15 years, I could tell you that the articulation has been good. And we did have a time, at least from the school perspective, in January, where we brought all 3 districts together for a staff development opportunity to share goals, to share procedures, and so forth. As needs increased and staff development needs for each individual faculty increased, over time, each district decided to take that January Institute Day to do something very unique and necessary for their own school. So whether it was a social, emotional, professional development, or work on math curriculum or English curriculum, they needed that time. And that's kind of how things kind of splintered off, and then COVID hit. And so we're trying to bring that back now, because a lot of the discussions that we have amongst all the superintendents have been really good about how do we now get back to recognizing that we need to align better, and realizing also that every district has groups of kids very different from each other. So this is a good opportunity. I think it's tremendous to be able to talk about really not focusing on, like I said, the negative, but looking at the opportunity to see what we can do to help kids be successful. That's what that's about.
Yeah, and I don't want to infer that I don't think it's a good idea for us to try and tighten up
Sure.
with 33, but I don't also want it to be like, why are we shining a spotlight on 33? Why aren't we doing it for all our feeders?
We absolutely need to strengthen relationships with all our feeders. It's also true that 33 provides the majority of our students, and there's a lot of students in the 33 part of our community that have some very deep needs, and so this is a very good place to get things started. But absolutely, we need to, as soon as we can, I'd love to get those data meetings going with 25 and 34 again, too, because that's been a while since those have happened, and back when I was on the 34 board, I found those to be extremely useful.
I was gonna say, Bob, Lynn, thanks for the work that you guys are putting in to make this happen, because like you guys are saying, this is a great step, to work together and, and help out serving the students in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. And, as Bob said, they approached us. Members of their school board approached us and wanted to have a meeting to talk about concerns that they had. And I also agree with Bob. I think the best focus for this is to talk about the future and talk about how we best meet the needs of the students. Your presentation just falls right into all of this too. So this work, all of this collaborating is just going to lead to positive results. And that's all we were looking at here. And by being approached by their school board members, that was their desire too. How do we move forward, and how do we do it together? So that's just the whole impetus behind this, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Any other comments and thoughts on this? All right, then I would ask, is there a consensus of the board to proceed with this? Is there anybody on the board that feels we should not proceed with this? All right, then. We will move forward with that. Thank you. All right, then. That brings us to future dates. We have a committee of the whole meeting scheduled for March 1st, regular board meeting for March 15th, committee of the whole on April 5th, and regular board meeting on April 19th. Any open comment from board members? Hearing none, any future issues that board members wish to have brought up?
Are we going to look a little more into an alternative to board books?
Yeah.
Is that
Yes, we will.
something
Yep.
we're working on? You'll
Yep.
be bringing?
Yeah, and that will be a long process because we want to delve into how we can take all the legacy documents from board book. That's what we are right now, right? Board book?
Yes.
Yes. And look at what board doc does to convert that, as well as all the other minutes and archive stuff that was not previously in a board book format. So yeah, we will look at that.
Okay, and in addition to board docs, are there any other
Board book and-
similar products out there?
Board book and board doc are the two major vendors that really specialize in doing this.
Okay.
So those were
I
the ones
didn't, I
I
didn't want to find out that there was somebody else.
Correct. Yep.
All right, so please keep us up to date with your research on that. Any other future issues?
I guess I'd mentioned coming back from the IASB about Safe Illinois. Is that something that administration has looked into? The ability to contact this state-run organization and get anonymous help?
I'll have to have a conversation with you, Rich, about that to refresh my memory on what that is.
Okay.
All right, any other future issues? Hearing none, that brings us to consent agenda. Does anybody need any items removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would move approval of the consent agenda, which includes Approval of minutes from the regular board meeting, January 18th, from the closed session board meeting, January 18th, committee of the whole meeting, February 1st, closed session, February 1st. Also, approval of financials, which includes current expenditures, impressed fund statement, treasurer's report, statement of position / financial report, statement of revenue and expenditures year-to-date ending January 31st, 2022, three-year budget / actual report, grant reports, petty cash fund report, student activity account fund balance, new vendors monthly report, quarterly financial reports, and board conference travel expenses. Also, adoption of textbooks, including Drive Right In 11th edition print, Chemistry, the Central Science 14th edition print and electronic, Biology, Campbell and Reese print and electronic, EPAC, Living and Environment print and electronic, College Physics, A Strategic Approach print and electronic, and Essentials of Human Anatomy print and electronic, as well as the personnel report, which includes, let me see here, which includes the leave of absence of non-certified staff and employment of coaches, and it's the version of the personnel report that was presented at table. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Doremus.
Aye.
Mr. Nagel.
Aye.
Mr. Sage.
Aye.
Mr. Zuniga.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Ms. Casey Mayer. Aye.
All right, that brings us to new business. Separation of employment. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the following: the retirement of Allison Baxter, teacher, World Languages Division, effective at the end of the 2025-2026 school year; the retirement of Roberta Felfley, teacher, Humanities Division, effective at the end of the 2025-2026 school year; and the retirement of Pedro Perez, custodian, grounds, building maintenance, and grounds division, effective June 30th, 2022.
Moved with regrets.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Zuniga.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Ms. Casey Mayer. Aye. Ms. Doremus.
Aye.
Mr. Nagel.
Aye.
Mr. Sage.
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to a passel of policies, the IASB draft policies, and this is going to approve for a first reading. The policies will not go into effect until they come back to us again for a second reading. So the recommended motion is that the Board of Education will approve changes to 57 policies as detailed in our agenda. Would someone care to make that motion? You don't have to name the policies to make the motion.
You want to read them?
Are we going through them at all?
Well, once it's moved and seconded, then it'll be open to questions on specific policies. We just need to get it on the table formally.
Yeah, policy committee still on.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so now it's open season for any questions, comments, concerns about any of these 57 policies. Granting that most of the changes were very minor in terms of legal references, but open season.
There are a few that had some questions from press. Are we going to discuss those? Or I have my usual 7 questions, comments. I can have those discussions with
Sure.
Dr. Chen.
Yeah, and just a reminder.
Aside, or we can, talk about it as a whole board.
Yeah, either way works. And I did provide the board with responses to those questions in my update and just a context for those. So if there's ones that are specifically that you would like to discuss, I'd be happy to pull that up and we can discuss that.
Well, as a first reading, we can still amend.
Correct.
So
Right.
Is there anything you want to bring
I don't
up?
want to bore everybody with.
If you've got significant questions, that's very germane to our discussion.
Yeah, I don't know how significant it would depend. I guess one question on 260. My question would be: is there any change in language we need with the contract, since the contract is sort of open right now. There was an issue, and I didn't have access to be able to make notes and print them, so I made some notes here. 260, I can see what I was looking at. Well, I guess just in general grievance, there were a couple minor changes, and I just would want to make sure that we don't have to make any modifications. Probably something where we would look at the policy and our contract and make sure that nothing needs to be tweaked. Probably not a decision we could make tonight, but since it's a change in policy and we're in the middle of working on the contract, just a quick question, do we need to make any changes there?
Yeah, if you go through the document, you'll notice that a lot of these changes are legal reference changes. So they're not substantive to the policy itself. There are some wording changes that go along with the updates. In regards to the comment, Press made the comment that the only thing that was optional was the statement about the delivery method by which the district would use to communicate information to an employee regarding the complaint. And that's innocuous for us. We would want to make sure that the recipient does get that, so we would definitely want to deliver that registered or have some sort of verification that it was received.
Yes, I think my question might have been, does that need to be added to the contract, that additional delivery method or anything?
No.
Okay.
And there's a policy in here about leave and sick time, and have you looked at any of these two?
Yeah, we reviewed these in detail in advance, yes.
Because we had made those changes in the contract, and I just wanted to make sure that they were in concert with each other, that one wasn't violating the other. So I would have to compare those, I guess, with our new TA that we wrote up.
I would suggest that, yeah, that after reviewing, I don't have any concerns about the
Okay.
wording of the policy and the direction that we're going.
All right, good.
I guess there's a couple changes in policy that, while I wouldn't question the policy, we're going to have some discussion procedurally. For example, auto enrollment in APP, we're going to have to figure out what that means in terms of how we're going to deal with that.
Correct.
And
So that
then instruction, requiring instruction time on some of these other issues, they don't say what kind of instruction time needs to be offered. We're going to have to figure out
Right.
how to address that.
You hit the nail on the head with a lot of the frustrations that districts have with these policies, is that they make requirements of the district, but it's left up to the building to decide how to squeeze that all into the same work, same school day, without any changes to, length of days and support. So that is a concern, and obviously all these came about through legislative changes.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then policy 7160, page 8. No, I'm sorry, policy 7160, number 8 on page 137. There's a section that just doesn't make any sense to me. If somebody can explain it, or we need to modify it.
Which is 7160?
7160 on page 137 of
This one?
that one. Is that? Is that the whole?
That's the whole policy.
There's no number 8 there? That's the whole policy. I must have the wrong number then. I'll have to go back and look at it. There's a sentence that just goes around in circles. I'll find it and bring it up to you.
Yeah, and we could talk about that too. If you wanted to give me a call, Rich, or let me know.
Oh, yeah. One other, 7315. it talks about off-campus.
Give me a second, getting there. As an aside, word on the street is that the next press update is just as large.
Good. Wonderful.
And when does that happen?
Oh, probably within 2-3 months.
Okay, so go down towards the end. Student journalist must, student journalist may not. Keep going. Distributed on campus, and it talks about controls for distribution off campus, but I don't know how we, and not necessarily at school events. I should have highlighted them and.
Yeah, just keep in mind that the changes to this policy are only what you see here in the green. So it changes the words MP3 files or CD-ROM to digital files.
Yeah.
And then striking out the word or.
No, I understand, but
Okay.
sometimes in reviewing the policy, if you see something else that
Okay.
is odd, take an opportunity to look at it. I'll go back and do
Okay.
it better.
Any other policies that anybody wishes to bring up?
Oh, one other, 5330, page 93, is that also consistent with our new contract? And again, I should have highlighted the exact wording. I'll go back and do a better job of making my notes here.
Yeah, I will too, because there was a policy in here that talked about, I think, developing a new committee or something like that. And they're all having a hard time finding it, so I'll get back to you soon.
Sounds good.
Moses, when board members do get back to you, if you could
I'll
then share what the issue was brought up and what the resolution was, so we're all aware of what's being thought about these.
Sure.
So just real quickly, like 5100, is this current for us, the staff development program?
Different way of handling policies I got used to.
Yeah, I know, me too. I was having a hard time going through here, and I'm like, I don't know.
So many of these updates with regards to something like this with the staff development is, it takes effect immediately, but it's for moving forward. So we have time to make the adjustments necessary. Yeah.
I was just wondering if we need to make adjustments.
Oh,
or if we're
correct.
already good here.
Yeah, we have to look into how this really impacts us, you know, in detail.
Again, this is kind of what we were talking about in negotiations, you know, the time that people need for trainings and stuff at the beginning of school year.
Anything else? Okay, then we are moved and seconded for approving a first reading. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Casey Mayer? Aye. Mr. Raymond?
Aye.
Mr. Nagel?
Aye.
Mr. Sake? Aye. Mr. Zuniga?
Aye.
All right, that brings us to resolution regarding Winfield TIF 2. Let me see here. All right. This board has had many discussions regarding the proposed Winfield TIF 2. Thus far, our board has been unanimously opposed to Winfield TIF 2. While TIF 2 would have an impact on all taxing bodies in Winfield, school districts 34 and 94 would bear the majority of that impact. Given the current state of affairs and the continued attacks that are being made against District 34 in their stand against TIF 2, it seems that it is time for our board to make a formal resolution regarding our opposition to TIF 2. Please note, this resolution does not indicate that we are joining the lawsuit at this time. That is a question that we can pursue at another time. This resolution is about making a formal statement to the community that we stand with District 34 in opposition to TIF 2. And with that in mind, allow me to read the proposed resolution into the record. Resolution in support of support for challenge to Village of Winfield TIF 2. Whereas the Village of Winfield has adopted ordinances to create a new tax increment financing district entitled Town Center 2 TIF District, and whereas the territory of TIF 2 includes properties owned by Central DuPage Hospital Association and properties owned by Winfield, including Village Hall of Winfield, whereas Winfield and CDH have entered into a development agreement regarding CDH's development of its properties within TIF 2, whereas the operation of TIF 2 would divert a significant amount of property tax dollars derived from the new CDH developments to a special tax allocation fund controlled by Winfield instead of distribution to all affected taxing bodies, including but not limited to Community High School District 94. And whereas a major purpose of Winfield in causing such diversion of TIF 2 revenues would be to provide financing for a new village hall and police station for Winfield instead of using revenues derived from Winfield's own taxes and other resources. And whereas the primary legislative purpose and public policy justification for permitting municipalities to create tax increment financing districts is to incentivize new economic development and thereby enhance the tax base for all affected taxing bodies. Whereas, however, pursuant to existing development agreement between Winfield and CDH and other circumstances, CDH's developments within Winfield and the territory of the TIF 2 will occur regardless of whether or not TIF 2 is created and implemented. And whereas, however, the financing of tax-exempt public buildings, such as a new village hall and police station for Winfield, do not enhance the tax base of the affected taxing bodies here. Whereas, however, even if TIF 2 were fully implemented and maintained as designated by Winfield, as designed by Winfield, a majority or substantial portion of the CDH developments would likely become tax exempt, as are the current principal buildings of CDH which are not located within TIF 2 before the expiration of TIF 2, because the development agreement between Winfield and CDH expressly permits CDH to seek tax exemptions for its new development after 20 years, which is shortly before the statutory expiration date of TIF 2. Whereas for these reasons, TIF 2 does not qualify for eligibility as a proper tax increment financing district and does not serve the legislative or public policy reasons for such districts. And whereas further development of a new village hall and police station for Winfield does not serve to benefit the majority of students and constituents of District 94 who are not residents of Winfield, and whereas without the implementation of TIF 2, the increased tax revenues from the new CDH developments would be a significant boost to District 94's budget and would allow the district to better meet the educational needs of all of our students, both those residing in Winfield and those who do not. And whereas for many of the reasons stated herein, Winfield District 34 has recently initiated in the Circuit Court of DuPage County a lawsuit challenging the validity of TIF 2. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of Community High School District 94, DuPage County, Illinois as follows. This board hereby finds that all of the recitals contained in the preamble to this resolution are full, true, and correct, and does now incorporate the same herein by reference. This board asserts that District 94 stands with our partner school district, District 34, in opposing TIF 2 and in supporting the objectives of the lawsuit. This board calls upon Winfield, in fairness to all taxpayers, to abandon its efforts to implement TIF 2 as it is presently designated. This resolution shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. So, at this point, let me see here. The recommended motion is the Board of Education approve the resolution as presented, and I will be happy to make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Casey Mayer. Aye. Ms. Doremus.
Absolutely aye.
Mr. Nagel.
Aye.
Mr. State. Aye. Mr. Zuniga.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye. All right, thank you for that. And Moses, please make sure that this resolution is communicated using all methods that we normally communicate to our community, email, Facebook, notification to newspapers, whatever we normally would do. All right, that brings us to proven IT copier contract.
As we discussed at the February Committee of the Whole meeting, we looked at options for a new copier contract, and that resulted in Proven IT providing a good solution. And so those maintenance agreement and the lease documents are here for the board for approval tonight.
All right, the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the copier lease with American Capital, Lisle, Illinois, for the amount not to exceed $176,695.68, along with the copier maintenance agreement with Proven IT, Schaumburg, Illinois, for an amount not to exceed $144,212.20, for a total copier package of $320,907.88 over a 4-year term. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Doremus.
Aye.
Mr. Nagel.
Aye.
Mr. Fig. Aye. Mr. Zuniga.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Ms. Casey Mayer. Aye.
All right, next up is student travel, choir and orchestra.
This is a request from our music department that the choir and orchestra members would like to travel to Disney. And if you do notice the date, it would be after school is out. It would be the first day after students are done. And since it is over 250 miles, we are coming to the board for approval in accordance with Board Policy 6.240.
Just a little bit over 250 miles.
A bit. I think it's about 275.
All right, the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve student travel for choir and orchestra to Orlando, Florida from May 26th through May 31st, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Nagel.
Aye.
Mr. Fig. Aye. Mr. Zuniga.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Ms. Casey Mayer. Aye. Ms. Doremus.
Aye.
All right, that concludes the regular business for this meeting. We will be going into executive session. At this point, I move we adjourn to executive session for collective negotiating matters.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Nagel.
Aye.
Mr. Fig. Aye. Mr. Zuniga.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Ms. Casey Mayer. Aye. Ms. Doremus.
Aye.
Okay, why don't we take 5 minutes?
Let the blinking stop, and then,
It's still blinking.
all right.
Okay, blinking has stopped. All right, we are back in open session. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are done.